The doors of the Hawthorne Club were not merely opened by the doorman, they asserted themselves. Thick mahogany, polished to arrogance, framed a world where power gathered to congratulate itself. I stepped inside, smoothing the sleeve of my simple navy suit, mentally rehearsing a smile meant for my son's engagement celebration. I had barely crossed the marble threshold when a man in a headset rushed toward me, panic written into every crease of his face. He pressed a crisp white apron into my hands. "You're late," he snapped, glancing at his watch. "Kitchen's to the left. Tray service starts in 5. For a fraction of a second, my fingers brushed the identification card resting inside my handbag. Federal credentials, authority, truth. I could have corrected him. I could have clarified that I was not staff, but the mother of the groom. Then I heard his voice. "Standards matter, Madison," the man said loudly from the coat check, with the practiced confidence of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "If Ethan's mother shows up looking like she cleans offices, keep her away from the partners. We can't have hired help confusing herself with guests." Sterling Hawthorne. I stopped breathing. He didn't know I was standing there. He didn't know who I was. And in that single moment, I understood something critical. The truth would reveal far more if I stayed silent. So I smiled, small, sharp, and tied the apron strings around my waist. "Yes, sir," I murmured to the manager. "Right away." In my courtroom, silence is not passive. It is strategic. If you let people talk long enough, comfortably enough, they will expose themselves. Tonight was no longer a celebration. It was an observation. I entered the ballroom carrying a silver tray, not as Judge Lydia Vance of the Second Circuit, but as a nameless presence dressed in white. The effect was immediate. Conversations did not pause when I approached. Eyes passed through me as if I were air. Invisibility is a powerful disguise. The room shimmered with wealth, crystal chandeliers, silk gowns, tuxedos tailored to arrogance. Laughter rose and fell like waves, lubricated by expensive champagne and inherited confidence. Across the room, I saw my son. Ethan stood near the champagne tower, tall and tense in his tuxedo. His face lit up when he spotted me, then froze. He took one step forward, recognition colliding with confusion. "Mom." I met his gaze and gave him the look. A subtle tilt of the head, a warning in the eyes. "Stand down." He swallowed, hesitated, then stepped back into the shadows beside a column. He had grown up watching that look dismantle hostile attorneys and reckless witnesses. He trusted it. Good. I moved through the crowd, circling closer to the Hawthorne family. Sterling stood near the orchestra, drink in hand, surrounded by men who nodded too eagerly. He was comfortable, dangerously so. The kind of man who believed the world existed to validate him. Nearby stood Madison Hawthorne, my son's fiancée. Her dress gleamed under the lights, silk woven with subtle diamonds. It was flawless, and worn like armor. She snapped her fingers at a passing server without breaking conversation, offering no thanks when her glass was replaced. "They should be grateful we're even considering this union," Sterling boomed, laughter spilling out of him. "Ethan's a smart kid, sure, but let's be honest, he's marrying up. We're doing them a favor." I felt heat rise in my chest, but I stored it carefully. Emotion belongs in evidence folders, not reactions. Discovery phase. I drifted closer, refilling a glass at Sterling's elbow. "More scotch, sir?" I asked, flattening my voice, sanding away years of authority. He didn't look at me. He flicked his hand dismissively. "Try not to spill it on the leather." Of course. As I turned away, the reality settled cold and precise inside me. They believed I was beneath notice, and because of that, they would not guard their words. The service corridor behind the ballroom was quiet, smelling of sanitizer and overworked coffee. I paused there, resting one hand against the tiled wall. 30 years ago, I wore a uniform like this. Back then, I worked night shifts mopping courthouse floors while studying from borrowed textbooks. I learned constitutional law between trash bins and bathroom sinks. I built my future from exhaustion and stubborn belief. Sterling Hawthorne looked at servers and saw failure. I looked at them and saw ambition waiting for oxygen. That was why I didn't remove the apron. It didn't reduce me. It reminded me where my strength came from. I re-entered the ballroom. The alcohol had loosened tongues. Laughter was louder, manners thinner. I noticed a young server, Sophia, approach Madison's circle, her hands trembling slightly as she balanced a tray of appetizers. "Excuse me, Miss Hawthorne," Sophia said gently. Would you care for… Madison spun around, irritation flashing across her face. No, she snapped. Absolutely not. I told the coordinator no shellfish near me. Are you incompetent or just careless? The words cut cleanly. Sophia faltered, eyes glassy. I'm sorry, I didn't… Clearly, Madison interrupted. Go away before you ruin something. Sophia turned too quickly, clipping the edge of a high-top table. A single champagne flute tipped, spilling harmlessly onto the marble floor. Sterling roared with laughter. You see this, Ethan? He said loudly. This is why good help doesn't exist anymore. Ethan looked sick. He started forward, then stopped. Madison's hand pressed possessively against his chest. That was when I stepped in. I didn't look at Sterling. I didn't look at Madison. I knelt beside Sophia. It's just champagne, I whispered, pulling a cloth from my apron. It wipes up. Her voice shook. I'm going to lose my job. You won't, I said softly. I promise. As I wiped the floor, I felt Madison looming above me. She mistook my kneeling for submission. She didn't understand power. True authority does not stand taller by pushing others down. I stood slowly, meeting her eyes. For a brief second, something flickered there. Uncertainty, perhaps. Then it vanished. Finally, she muttered, turning away. I walked back toward the service station, my decision settled. The observation phase was complete. The trial had already begun. I replaced the damp cloth at the service station and steadied my breathing. What I had witnessed was not rudeness or entitlement alone. It was character. And character, once revealed, does not improve under pressure. It fractures. The ballroom had shifted. The music was louder, laughter rougher, bodies leaning closer together. Alcohol had done what truth always waits for time to accomplish. It loosened restraint. I resumed my circuit, tray balanced on one palm, eyes open and unblinking. I wasn't serving anymore. I was listening. Sterling Hawthorne had migrated to the far corner of the room, near the tall windows overlooking the river. This was where deals were whispered, not celebrated. The inner circle. Men in tailored black formed a closed half-ring around him, shoulders angled inward, voices dropped just low enough to feel conspiratorial. I approached from behind, replacing empty flutes without interrupting. The Meridian merger is locked, Sterling said confidently. 40 billion, clean and quiet. One of the men hesitated. The Justice Department is still reviewing it, and the case just landed with Judge Vance. My hand didn't tremble. Sterling laughed. Vance, please. She's meticulous on paper, but she came up through family court. Soft, overworked, she won't dig. Another voice cut in, uneasy. The environmental impact reports are bad. If she sees the groundwater data, she'll shut the whole thing down. Sterling took a slow sip of his drink. She won't see them. Silence fell. We're not destroying evidence, are we? Someone asked quietly. Sterling scoffed. Don't be dramatic. We buried them. Box 4000 in Discovery, right between cafeteria invoices and parking logs. 2 million pages. No judge alive will waste time digging through that. My pulse remained calm. This was not a reaction moment. This was documentation. That's obstruction, the nervous partner muttered. Sterling smirked. That's efficiency. I stepped back into the shadows, my mind cataloging every word. Admission of spoliation, conspiracy, intent. He raised his glass. We steamroll her, gentlemen. Big words, thick binders, and we walk away richer. I refilled a glass near his elbow. More champagne? I asked. Keep it coming, he said without looking. I turned away. The shape of the evening crystallized. This was no longer about class or arrogance. This was federal crime discussed casually over sparkling wine. Sterling wasn't finished. And the wins keep coming, he said, voice swollen with pride. Madison secured the D.C. internship, Solicitor General's office. Several men murmured approval. That program takes 3 applicants a year, one said. Top of the Ivy League. Sterling chuckled. Connections matter. I stopped walking. There was some other applicant, he continued lazily. Perfect scores, state school, hard worker apparently. But what good is brilliance without pedigree? Her application got misfiled. The words landed with surgical cruelty. I turned my head slowly toward the service corridor. Sophia sat on a milk crate, her break timer ticking beside her. A thick book rested open on her knees, an LSAT prep guide. Its pages were worn, annotated in cheap blue ink, focused, earnest. The puzzle snapped together. She wasn't just a server. She was the stolen future Sterling had dismissed with a wave of his hand. This wasn't favoritism, it was theft. I placed the champagne bottle down with deliberate weight. The sound was final. Enough. I reached into my apron pocket and pulled out my phone. One contact, one message. Code blue, kitchen, need a witness. I sent it and slid the phone away. Moments later, the kitchen door swung open. Senator William Reynolds stepped into the room, his presence commanding immediate attention. Conversations faltered, heads turned, power recalibrated. Sterling's face lit up. He straightened, extending his hand. Senator Reynolds, Sterling Hawthorne, an honor. The senator walked past him without a glance. He stopped in front of me. Lydia, he said clearly, why are you wearing an apron? The silence was absolute. Sterling's hand remained suspended in the air, forgotten. I untied the apron slowly, folded it with care, and placed it on the tray. I wanted to observe, I said calmly. I smoothed my suit jacket. Madison stared, color draining from her face. I am Judge Lydia Vance, I continued, my voice carrying without effort. Presiding judge on the Second Circuit Court of Appeals. Sterling staggered back a step. Judge, there's been a misunderstanding. Was it a misunderstanding when you admitted to burying environmental impact reports? I asked. Or when you outlined your plan to obstruct federal review? His mouth opened, closed. There is no privilege, I added coolly, in shouting criminal strategy at a waiter. Senator Reynolds folded his arms. You will explain this, I said under oath. I turned to Madison. And as for the Solicitor General internship, I said, watching her shrink, I sit on the Oversight Committee. I will personally review how a qualified applicant was displaced. Tears welled in her eyes, but I felt nothing. Justice does not pity entitlement. I gestured toward Sophia. Her name, I said, will be restored to the record. The room remained frozen as the weight of consequence settled in. This was no longer a party. It was accountability. And the sentencing had not yet begun. No one moved. The orchestra had fallen silent, bows hovering midair as if the musicians were unsure whether they were permitted to breathe. The chandeliers still glittered, but the room had lost its warmth. Wealth does that. It shines beautifully until authority enters the room. Then it turns brittle. Sterling Hawthorne was the first to break. Judge Vance, he said hoarsely, forcing a smile that collapsed halfway across his face. Let's not turn a family celebration into something regrettable. Emotions run high. Words get exaggerated. Words don't exaggerate themselves, I replied evenly. People do. Madison stood frozen beside him, her earlier sharpness replaced by panic. Her hands clenched the fabric of her dress as if it could shield her. I turned slightly, my gaze landing on Ethan. He stood very still near the champagne tower, his face pale but clear-eyed. For the first time that evening, he was not shrinking. He was watching, really watching, the people he had planned to bind his life to. Ethan, I said gently. He stepped forward, breaking free from Madison's grip. The room seemed to lean in. Is what they said true? He asked her quietly. About the internship? Madison opened her mouth, then closed it again. Her father tried to interject. Son, these things are complicated. No, Ethan said, surprising everyone, including me. They're not. He looked at Madison. Did you take something that wasn't earned? Her silence was answer enough. The illusion cracked. I turned back to Sterling. Your merger will be stayed pending a full investigation. I will be referring tonight's statements to the Department of Justice. Senator Reynolds was kind enough to hear every word. The senator nodded once. Sterling's knees seemed to weaken. You can't destroy my firm over a conversation. I'm not destroying anything, I corrected. I'm preserving the law. I gestured toward Sophia, who stood uncertainly near the service entrance, her book clutched to her chest. You, I said kindly, come here. She hesitated, then approached. This young woman, I addressed the room, earned her place, and because of that, she will have it. Sophia's eyes filled with tears, but she stood straight. I will personally ensure your application is restored, I said, and reviewed on merit alone. A ripple passed through the guests. Some looked ashamed. Others looked relieved that it wasn't them. Madison let out a quiet sob. Ethan turned to me. Mom, he said, voice steady. I don't think I can marry into this. Sterling snapped. You ungrateful! Ethan cut him off. I won't build my life on cruelty. Madison stared at him as if seeing him for the first time. Ethan, please, this is just stress. No, he said gently. This is who you are when no one thought it mattered. He removed the engagement ring and placed it on the nearest table. The soft clink echoed louder than the orchestra ever had. That was the end. Security quietly escorted Sterling away as whispers erupted behind him. Madison followed, head bowed, her dress suddenly looking like exactly what it was, fabric without grace. The guests began to disperse, conversations hushed, smiles forced. Power recalibrated again, this time in the opposite direction. I watched Sophia speak with the event coordinator, her posture straighter now. I watched Ethan exhale for what felt like the first time all evening. The chandeliers dimmed slightly as staff began the quiet work of dismantling a dream that should never have been built. Later, in the emptying ballroom, Ethan stood beside me. I didn't know, he said, about everything you gave up. You didn't need to, I replied. That was the point. He smiled faintly. You planned this. I observed. I corrected. People reveal themselves when they think no one important is watching. He looked around the room, then back at me. I'm proud of you. I squeezed his hand. I'm proud of you, too. Sophia approached hesitantly. Judge Vance, she said. Thank you. You did the work, I said. I just removed the obstacle. She nodded, clutching her book, hope restored where it had nearly been erased. As we left the Hawthorne Club, the heavy doors closed behind us. Not looming now, just wood and brass like anything else. Power, I had learned long ago, is not where people think it lives. It lives in restraint, in listening, in knowing exactly when to speak. And tonight, justice had spoken clearly enough.